I am here with Pastor Ron Vanderwell. We have Vanderwalls around here in Oostburg, but am I saying that right? Vanderwell?
Yes.
Good. I should have met Pastor Ron at the last Classis meeting and didn't introduce myself, so we're meeting today on Zoom for the first time. Hello. Pastor Ron, you're out in Madison at Crossroads. Would you mind giving a little introduction to people, who you are, how you ended up in Madison? What's your ministry history like?
Let's see. My name is Ron. I'm a pastor, an STM, a specialized transition minister here in Madison. And that means it's somebody who's trained to come in and help churches retool between one season or one chapter and another one. So that's sort of what I do. I've been a pastor since I was ordained in 1990. And I come from a family of pastors. My dad was a pastor. My uncle was a pastor. I have a grandpa, I think, who was a pastor. And so growing up, I did not want to be a pastor. It was just like too predictable and too expected. And between the beginning of high school and the end of college, I pursued everything else that I possibly could. And so now here I am. Most of the ministry settings I've been involved in have involved conflict. And I don't know why. I don't really want that for a specialty. It's a horrible specialty to have, but it does give a context for what I do to help churches retool. Moving into another pastor relationship for church is hard. It's like another marriage. It's like, there's so many, your second marriage is so similar to your first one, all the same basic household, whatever. And yet the divorce rates for second marriages are even higher than first marriages. It's not easy to transition a heavily involved relationship from one pair of people to another. And the same thing is true with churches. So I'm busy here at Madison helping them retool after the end of Pastor Doug's ministry here as they prepare for whatever's coming next. There's some unique challenges here, but the hardest thing is talking about them. And it's just like, it's not hard to argue about them, but it's really hard to talk about them. And so my job is to ask questions and provide subtitles for the things that God might be doing.
And where were you at before Madison?
As an STM, I was in the state of Massachusetts before coming here. But as a regular pastor, I was in Illinois, in New Lenox, Illinois, at New Life Church. I was a senior pastor there. Prior to that, I was my wife and I church planted. We planted a church in Sacramento, California. Cool. It was called The Gathering. We met in the movie theater, which was cool.
Nice.
We had huge cup holders. The communion cups were this big.
Popcorn church.
That's right. Yeah.
We had a church in our area in Sheboygan that started in the movie theater, and they're huge now. Yeah, doing really well.
Okay. Yeah. So we were there about a dozen years. Cool. And then prior to that, I was in Kalamazoo, Michigan, at Southern Heights Church.
Nice. Cool.
So that's where we've been, and I've found myself fascinated with what it takes to help a church work better or do better. And so I have a brother who's always under the hood with somebody else's car, and it's like I do that with churches.
Yeah, that's a cool analogy. Yeah, we're pretty familiar with STMs here in Oostburg. Pastor Kuiper, who was here for 20 plus years, maybe 25 years, was my pastor growing up. He was going to retire, but was just too good at ministry to hang it up, so he did some STM work. And then Pastor Tom Pettinga came in after him and was really great. Really great for our church. So we're thankful for the work of the STMs and you too. Second question, follow up is always, what are you working on? Now that might mean, what are you preparing to preach on Sunday, or what have you been tossing around in your head? But what are you working on, Ron?
A lot of what I've been thinking about lately has been a series. I'm not sure exactly how to answer that. A lot of it has to do with reconciliation. And reconciliation is maybe a little bit um, like an illness that affects every system in your body. And so you may hurt everywhere because of one thing or because of a dozen things. And so a lack of reconciliation is just really tough. A church will struggle if there's chronic unresolved alienation or angst between members. And so really, I arrived here about 10 months ago in Madison. And really almost everything I've done has been working on trying to bring to the surface and put on the table things that need to be named but haven't been named yet, or need to be put fully into words, and so that they can be dealt with. I remember a pastor once I knew a long time ago was kind of bragging about his own church in a good way. And he talked about how one of the things I love most about our church is that we've learned how to fight in person. And I really appreciated it. I remember it took me a while to realize what he meant. And then I think that's actually really cool, because it's so easy to fight in absentia. I don't like somebody, so I'll talk about them behind their back with other people. And, we give them a good beating up just behind their backs. And it's not, sometimes people are really mean and they intend to do that, but more often it's just like, that's just how it happens, because it's just easier to vent and share concerns about people when they're not with us. And it's really hard to talk about hard things with the people they involve. That's really tough. And then maybe it's not hard to start that conversation, but the last 20% of that conversation can be really brutal. And usually it's that last 20% of that conversation or that meeting or that decision or whatever. The last 20% is what makes or breaks the church. And so a lot of what I do is helping people identify where they're skipping the last 20% and how to help them actually get into that without doing unnecessary collateral damage.
I came across.
So, to answer your question, the first 3 Sundays of this year, we're focusing on reconciliation. So it was a worship service a week ago Sunday dealing with the gospel and how if we have the gospel, we will have to be reconciled. And if we're not reconciled, whatever our faith is built on, it's not built on the gospel. This past Sunday was a service of repentance and reconciliation, which is kind of a dicey thing to do in front of your church neighbors. And but we had a pretty awesome experience of people being very real, which is actually really encouraging.
Yeah.
And so then we'll conclude the service this coming Sunday looking at what do you do? How do you move on when you've forgiven, but you still remember stuff? And so that's what's coming up Sunday.
Yeah, we're celebrating communion on Sunday, and the form that we read the week prior encourages you to reconcile with neighbors, to be at peace with your neighbors. And I've been thinking about that. I mean, it doesn't sound like nearly as deeply as you have, Ben. But what does that mean? If one of my jobs to come to the Lord's table is to be reconciled to my neighbor, where does that put reconciliation kind of in the ranks of the Christian life? And it's pretty foundational, right? Because like you said, if you have the gospel, you have reconciliation, right? It kind of flows naturally. I also came across, I think it's 1 Corinthians 15 or 2 Corinthians 15, this language that I never noticed before. It said that you are ambassadors of reconciliation. Yeah, you familiar with that one?
Yeah.
I just found that language really striking, to be an ambassador of reconciliation. Like, what would that look like in justice and in deed and in word and in worship, to be an ambassador of reconciliation?
Like we're supposed to be carriers of it.
Yeah.
And usually we're carriers of concerns or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
But not
worry. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Have you found, I mean, when you said the last 20% of the conversation is the most difficult and the most necessary, man, that really hit home. Have you found any practices or any postures to be really helpful in having those types of conversations? Like the last 20% conversation?
Yeah. Well, what I'm thinking about, honestly, as you and I start talking about that, and I wasn't sure how this fits in, but it has to be said somewhere. It's a weird spot to be a pastor in the middle of this, because as a pastor, kind of your job is to be a professional Christian, to be good for a living. I mean, you're supposed to be on the high side of any of these curves, and you and I both know we're not. but that's the image that you have. So that makes it, your starting point is a playing field that's not level. If I really level with someone about the dark things inside me, what did that do to my credibility with them? Can they trust me if they know that Ron resents this or has these temptations or whatever? On the other hand, if I don't, that's even less credible. And so getting to the last 20% just for myself as a pastor is really difficult. And I got to believe it's no easier for somebody who sits, in a seat listening to me on Sunday. So it's a hard process to start. And I guess what I would say about it for here today is it comes from a lot of screwing up. And it's sort of like, it's not like I always do this and then, the way I picture Tom Brady playing football, where it's just like he's been doing the same thing for so many years and he just seems perfect. And I don't know if you're a Patriots fan or not, but and so it's just like, if you do it right, you can look superhuman for years and years and years. And I don't think that really helps stuff in the family of Christ. Most of us aren't perfect, and the times I've tried to look like I was closer to it, something goes wrong and it sets us back. On the other hand, I remember someone who I was on staff with in the first church I was a pastor of, when we interviewed him for our associate pastor position. I remember he said to me, I was just asking a whole bunch of questions from different angles, like, what's it like to work with you? And tell me what you like and so forth. And one thing he said, which stopped me short, was, I'm really good at apologizing. And he said, it's because I screw up a lot. And I went for a long time, I try not to screw up. And then I realized I'm not going to get over screwing up. What I can do is get over not apologizing. And over the next several years, I had a chance to see that he was, in fact, really good at repairing and rebuilding bridges with people. And that put him and us in good shape.
Yeah. He was an ambassador of reconciliation.
Yeah. Yeah. Very like. 2 Corinthians.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I'll forgive you for using Tom Brady as an example instead of Aaron Rodgers, who I would have picked as that sort of done it for a long time, precise quarterback.
Yeah.
But you did ministry in Massachusetts, so we'll reconcile here in front of everybody about that. That's good. Well, I appreciate your time, Ron. That's really thought-provoking and useful for everybody. I mean, who doesn't have need for reconciliation? That's the gospel. So beautiful. I also ask every time, any way we can pray for you or pray for Crossroads Madison in the coming weeks?
Yeah. We had some really important conversations in our service this past weekend. And so I think a lot of folks are going to be, okay, how do we rearrange our furniture to make room for this? This is, a lot of the ways that we've kind of thought about some of our people or thought about ourselves as a church might not fit with this, or we've, at a lot of different times, I think Crossroads has been trying to hold on to mutually incompatible ideas of ourselves or what it means to be the church or whatever, just things you can't hold forever. And I would imagine that for a lot of folks, there's a sense that we can't hold this in forever. And I think Crossroads is reaching the point of that. So I would love your prayers for whatever the Holy Spirit is doing. And I don't know what the future holds for Crossroads, and it's not my job to inform them of God's will. It's my job just to help them seek after whatever God's doing. And so I would love your prayers for helping me help them seek God with passion and curiosity.
Yeah, and we know that when we seek, we will find, and when we knock, doors are opened, right? So
Yeah,
we're thankful for God's perfect will for us in all circumstances, and I'm thankful
yeah,
for your work in the classes, Pastor Ron, and hope to get to know you better over the years, or as long as the Lord will have you here.
yeah. Oh, thank you, Zach. I appreciate a chance to talk with you here.
Yeah, great.